Waters of Freedom with your hosts, Matt Wright and Mohammed Shaker. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Vanguard. For Matt, Mohammed's not here today. He had some stuff he had to get done, and so I brought on a very special guest. But we're going to be traversing the Muddied Waters of Freedom. And let me welcome on my good friend and the only person that I have ever met who looks more like a Nazi than I do, Caleb Franz from Mill Liberty.
How's it going, Matt?
How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. That's quite the introduction.
Yeah.
Caleb the Nazi Franz.
Well, I get called...
I guess my German name doesn't help with that either.
No. I mean, your hair is blonder than mine, and your eyes are bluer than mine, and your skin is paler than mine.
Very German.
Yes. Yes, you are. But I am definitely glad that you came on the show today. I do appreciate it.
Second time, too. Am I the second time guest that you've had on the show?
You are not. You're second time.
Significantly less important now
than
what I did about 5 seconds ago. Thanks a lot.
But I know I'm going to have you on sometime next week too. I'm
going to have you on sometime next 2 weeks. I think I don't even remember when I'm having you on.
November 30th. I will be.
November 30th.
Yes, November 30th. I will be on your show, Mill Liberty, for anybody out there listening or watching.
Then I will be back in 2 days.
Right. Yeah, you're going to be...
I'll be down in Florida in 2 days after that.
I know. Yeah, I am very excited about that. For anybody who does not know, December 2nd, Mo and I are doing our 1-year anniversary show of the Muddied Waters of Freedom, and we are lucky enough to have Caleb coming down to be live with us.
Blessing you all with my presence.
Blessing us with your presence. And I am also lucky enough to say that Caleb is going to be staying at my house that weekend, and I am going to introduce him to the world of kava and kratom.
That's right, because I've not, for the 2 times that I've been on this show, I have not had any, so that's going to change, apparently.
That is definitely going to change. You are going to enjoy the hell out of some kava and kratom that weekend.
Embrace that.
For as long as the FDA continues to allow us to have it.
Well, that's another story.
That is another story, and we will get to that very soon. So real quick, so for anybody out there watching / listening, I sent Caleb the greatest text message of all time this week.
And it sent twice because I don't have any service where I live. So the iMessage sent through, and then about 4 hours later, I get it again in text message form whenever the service picked it up. So I get these massive novels in my phone two times in a row in a single day.
Yes. But it started because Caleb was I had a dream. Caleb is now entering my dreams because we're so involved in each other's lives. But he was in my dream, so I woke up and I texted him. I was like, "You and your girlfriend were in my dream last night. You suck at crime fighting." To which he responded, "That was the strangest text I've ever received." And I said, "I'll top that by the end of the day."
And I don't even think it was an hour later. And he sends me literally a novel of, I don't know. I didn't actually read it because I was like, yeah, this topped it. I don't even need to know what's the context, the content inside this message. He already topped it.
Yes, man, you didn't read that? That was so funny. I laughed for a
I was like, I'm just going to skip over this. And then it sent again, and I was like, man, he really wants me to read this.
That wasn't me wanting you to read it. That was God wanting you to read it. Because
apparently he really wanted me to laugh at that.
Yes, because it was absolutely hilarious. It was the story on how I met my father. The very
met your father?
Yeah. A very fictional story of how I met my father. It starts with me being kidnapped by circus midgets.
Did your hand get cut off?
No. No.
Were you having a glowing sword and your handle? Because I don't think anything will ever top that father to son meet.
No. No. Not even a little bit. Oh,
That's important.
God. So Caleb is also one of the only other people I know that has the movie pass. And I get so many
Yes.
text
Oh my
messages
gosh,
from him.
is the best investment I have ever made.
It is definitely worth $10 a month, like no
I
question.
mean, you get your money's worth out of it, like in two movies, depending on where you are. Depending on how expensive movie tickets are in your area.
Yeah,
But
like one movie pays for the entire month. So as long as I go to one movie a month, I've paid for it. And I go to more than that a month. I've been kind of
easily,
slacking recently, but I keep
easily.
getting so many text messages. He's like, "Hey, have you seen this movie yet?" It's like the day it came out, like after the first showing. Did you see?
Well, I mean, I depending on the movie, I typically go to premieres for like Marvel films or
Right,
Star Wars. Obviously, I'm going to be
obviously.
going to that.
Yeah,
But
I had to buy those tickets early.
yeah, I still haven't gotten that yet. But I'm not as concerned in the area that I live about selling out too early,
Right.
which I'm pretty sure it'll sell out eventually. But I'm not going to get it the day of. But I still have a little bit of time to
Yeah,
work that out.
we ended up buying 20 tickets to that show.
That is ridiculous,
Yeah.
but also very good.
Yes, we bought an entire row of seats in the IMAX for that show, and
You can bring literally anyone and everyone that you want.
exactly. And it's so funny because like we came out, we have a list of people, and people are coming up to me and going, "Do you still have any tickets to Star Wars?"
Did you buy all of those with the movie pass?
No, God no,
No.
no.
I didn't think so. I was like, if you can do that with that thing,
Oh
that is
yeah, that is
glorious.
glorious.
That
I
would
would
be
definitely,
absolutely glorious.
I would pay for so many movies that way. I'd just buy 20
Yeah.
right tickets. But no, you can only buy one movie every 24 hours with that.
Yeah, I knew that was the case, but I didn't know how advance purchases worked.
Yeah, we didn't even use MoviePass for that. We just paid straight,
Just bought the tickets.
just bought the tickets. I figure I'm going to go see the movie 3 times anyway.
It's
So
Star Wars, so
yeah,
it's The Last Jedi.
it is. It is The Last Jedi. It is episode 8, which I was getting a little sad because I thought that the story was coming to an end, and then they announced a whole new trilogy coming out afterwards. And I'm like,
Yeah, I know.
this story's never going to end. I can't
Not
wait.
to mention all the anthology movies
Oh
and
yeah,
everything like that to be included.
I'm looking forward to Solo. I think.
Well, I'm looking forward to any Star Wars film in general.
Right.
But really the only anthology movie that I really, really want is a Kenobi movie.
Oh, absolutely. I want a Kenobi. I would love a Yoda movie, but
I would too, because you see, Yoda's always been my favorite character, but with Kenobi, I feel like has the potential for the most like story rich. I think that could be something like the way the Star Wars version of like Logan without the cursing and the blood. But as far as the tone and the mood goes, I mean, if you think after what just happened in episode 3, then he's probably not going to be in the best state of mind.
true. That's actually a really good point. That could be that would be a very excellent, and with if Ewan McGregor comes back to play him, which nobody else can.
Of course he will.
Yeah,
Like
nobody else.
the
can.
only other person who could is Alec Guinness. If they dug him out of his grave and woke him up from the dead and said, "You're going to play this as Obi-Wan Kenobi."
Right, and they were like, you know that movie that you did that you hated, but you ended up doing and you ended up winning an Academy Award for. We need you to come back to life to play that character again. And he'd be like,
Played it 3 times. Even as ghost form, you can't get away from it.
right. It's either you're going to agree to do this or we're just going to CGI you into every scene anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't, because that's what they did with Tarkin. So
It's what they did with Tarkin, and Carrie Fisher was still alive, so she probably gave rights to that. But
Yeah, but I mean, she was not the 19-year-old
No,
spring chicken
no,
that she was in in The New Hope.
no, she was not. But yeah, when she turned around in that, I just went, this is great. Thank you so much, Star Wars, for this. I was like, thank you for bringing me right back to my adolescence.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
The last like 5 minutes of it was the most glorious entertainment and movie cinema that I have ever experienced.
Yes, I will agree with that wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. Like I felt
So
like a
far,
child. Yeah, I felt like a child
so
leaving
far.
leaving that theater. I was just everything was. I was giddy. I was happy. I was like, this
Yeah,
is
they
amazing.
couldn't have ended it on a better note
No,
than that.
absolutely, that was perfect the way that they did that. But getting on to the actual episode, because you and I could probably sit here and talk Star Wars for the entire episode.
Well, I'm going to have an entire episode before The Last Jedi comes out. I'm going to have an entire episode of my show just devoted to Star Wars.
Nice,
Yeah,
excellent.
I think I don't remember when it is. I plan these shows and they leave my mind until it happens. I think it's the week after the 1 year anniversary.
Okay, so like December 10th ish, 8th ish.
I think the 7th,
Okay,
but I could be wrong about that.
the date that lives in infamy.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Yep. Yeah. So, oh, and you and I also have a date at the Star Wars Hotel as soon as it opens, don't we?
When is that again?
That is a great question. They're thinking 2020.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, I could probably do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like we have time to save and plan.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That shouldn't be an issue if
Right.
it's that far in advance.
Exactly. And if you don't know what the Star Wars Hotel is in Florida, look that up because I can't wait. I plan on living there sometime for a very extended period of my life.
You'll pay rent as in the hotel,
Right. Like I will quit my job to go work there. Like
and pay rent in one of the rooms.
exactly. Anyway, yesterday the FDA decided that they were going to be complete dicks and reopen old wounds for many, many people, and decided that they were going to say that kratom, one of the many outstanding all-natural beverages that we serve at Low Tide Kava Bar in Gulfport, Florida, if you happen to be around, go try it, is not something.
Plug.
Yeah, that's me plugging one of our sponsors. But yeah, they decided to state that it is not something that people should try and that there is no medical benefit that they have found for it. And okay, well, I am not a doctor and I can't make any medical claims, blah, blah, blah. That's bullshit. Like, that is absolutely bullshit. I have seen the stuff that it has done for people. I know all the stuff that I've seen it help people with pain. I've seen it help people with addiction problems. It's helped me with multiple issues. It's helped people with anxiety disorders. It's helped people with so many other problems. And all of these are, anecdotal evidence kind of things. But even still, for them to say that they are going to work with the DEA for more regulatory control over the product is wrong.
Well, since when also has it really been a concern of whether or not it is of health benefits to people? Like we stuff ourselves every single year with so much food that is very clearly bad for us.
Right.
That's not an issue. Nobody bats an eye about that.
No, absolutely
But
not.
for something like this, for something that might be slightly controversial,
Yeah,
it's
they
asinine.
in the report that came out yesterday, they cited 38 deaths that were related to kratom. Now, from my extensive research on it, any death that had anything to do with kratom, another drug was also in the system.
So you could technically, with that logic, you could say the same thing about like energy drinks.
Right. You could say the same. I mean, you could say the same thing about pretty much anything. It's like, oh, this guy was drinking water and he died. I mean, granted, he was on heroin at the time, but
Yeah,
the
or
the
he
water killed him.
choked to death because he took too much or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Exactly. And they were saying 38 deaths. I have not seen any evidence to support it. Like I've seen people. I did an interview for CBS here in Tampa about a kid who allegedly overdosed on kratom, but then it came out later he had multiple drugs in his system that were known that if you were mix these drugs could cause things like coma and or death. But they were blaming it on the kratom.
Which I mean, like most drugs, if you mix anything, it's probably not going to be good.
Right. And the way I see it is, I mean,
including prescription drugs,
the
drugs that are supposed to be good for you.
Right. Which is what actually the drugs that he had in his system were all prescriptions.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I know that I fall under a certain group of people that a lot of people don't agree with this statement, but I personally think all drugs should be legal.
I agree.
Yeah, I knew you did.
Yeah, I obviously.
But yeah, I think all drugs should be legal. I think that I should be able to walk into the corner store and buy heroin, like if, I wanted to. I think that would be.
Well, the thing is like the fact that, and this can be applied with anything, but it could be applied with drugs, with prostitution, with even guns and stuff like this. But whenever you make something illegal like this and there's still a demand for it, then that's just going to push it into a black market. And then that's when it actually gets dangerous.
Yes.
That's when it actually gets really bad. I mean, sure, it could still be dangerous when it's legal, and nobody is disputing that with most things, especially like heroin or something like that. But the worst approach to it is to say we're just going to clamp down on this and treat you like you're, subhuman.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is we treat so many people, especially addicts, as though they are subhuman. When many times, yeah, granted, you do have the choice at some point in your life whether or not to use drugs, 100%. But there's sometimes that you do it. Some people can try, cocaine once, never do it again. People can try heroin a few times and never do it again. And then you have the other people who they get hooked and they get stuck. And to treat them like criminals as opposed to trying to help them treat this problem is where the issue is.
Yeah, and more than that, I would say that more people have had their lives ruined, if not just like either killed or just completely ruined where they can't find a job, through the system that is in place to try to prevent people from doing this, through the criminal justice system that we have, because it's not incentivizing you to get off the drugs. We're going to say you were on the drugs, so we're going to put you in prison. This way you're going to get a felony. This way you can't get a job. This way you have nothing else to turn back to. You'll lose family members. You'll lose friends. You'll have nothing else to turn back to except for what puts you here in the first place. And we will perpetuate this for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life. Because we're going to put you in jail for this minor drug offense. And then you're going to get out and you're going to have trouble finding a job. You're going to probably end up finding like a cheap job, like a job that doesn't pay you a whole lot. And you end up wanting more money. And you may turn to a life of crime. Then you get back in the system because you were already in there. And then it just...
If it was legal, and this is something that we can, this is something that we can allude to in some other topics that we want to talk about. But if it was completely legal, then they would not be turning back to these ways of life.
Exactly.
They would actually have the chance to rehabilitate.
Yes.
And become functioning members of society. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called corrections because you want to correct the problem. You don't want to keep them in prison. You want to make them members of society when they get out.
Right.
Unless they're like stone cold killers. In which case, I don't know why you would want them back in society.
In which case, it's just called prison and it's not called Department of Corrections.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what the FDA has essentially tried to begin doing here is they're going to try to make anybody who uses this all-natural leaf, which they've done before in the past. I'm certain many people know what I'm talking about. They're trying to make this all-natural leaf something that will create many criminals out of people who don't actually deserve to be criminals. They're just people who don't enjoy. Many of them are people who don't like the alcohol scene. I got really scared because the moment that I said I think all drugs should be legal, my dad called me. And I was like, no, Dad, I'm doing a show. I can't. And then he just texted me to let me know when he was going to be in town. But
Can't have this debate right now.
yeah, I was like, Dad, I'm not doing this right now with you. I'm doing it on air. But yeah, but they're attempting to just turn all of these people into criminals in order to force them into having to live a black market life when they don't need to do that.
No, there's no reason for that. If you want them to actually contribute to society, if you want them to actually be, some sort of functioning members with a stable family and turning away from their life of crime and drugs and everything, then we're doing the exact opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. That would actually be beneficial.
Right. And the way that I've seen it is, I've talked about this on the show multiple times, that I've struggled with addiction pretty much my entire life. And I still struggle to this day with it. And when I decided to give up drinking alcohol, actually I didn't decide to give up drinking alcohol. I made a bet with somebody because I like winning more than I like anything else. I made a bet with somebody and he was like, you can't quit drinking for a month. And I was like, watch me. And then I started drinking, kava and kratom. And I started noticing I was being more productive and I was contributing more and I was getting more done. And that was when I started realizing maybe the alcohol was part of what was holding me back. And I'm not saying that it does that for everybody. I'm saying it did that for me. And then I was able to readjust my life accordingly.
Right. And I think that's also the other thing that has to be taken into account. Because, I could drink, anything I want and it not really affect me that much. It's different for other people, and you can't just have a one-size-fits-all
right
approach to, especially something that is only affecting an individual person.
Exactly. And when they're saying that 38 deaths over the course of 5 years or whatever has them concerned, that's just hypocrisy because they ignore thousands upon...
There's so much other things
exactly.
that they could be focusing on.
Exactly. We're talking about 38 deaths, which I don't personally believe, and granted, I'm not a doctor, nor do I work for the FDA, so I don't know what studies they're looking at, but 38 deaths that I don't personally believe have anything to solely do with kratom is compared to the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of deaths from heart disease or from alcohol or cigarettes or whatever else. And it's just, I don't think any of that stuff should be banned. Not one of it. If we could get rid of heart disease, that'd be cool, but
you can't legislate it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, sorry, you have heart disease, that's illegal. Well, you've got diabetes, sorry, you're going to prison.
Let's put you in jail for this.
Right. So I don't see why they're focusing on this, except for the fact that I do believe that it does help people with their opiate addictions, and they want to sell more drugs to help people get off of their opiate addictions.
Well, yeah, it seems to me like this is the same sort of situation that people like with e-cigarettes and vaping and stuff like that with tobacco. That it's a safe alternative. There's no real.
I would say safer. It's a safer alternative.
Yeah. It's not going to lead to the same kind of things at the same mass scale that that cigarettes and tobacco leads to.
Right.
But if there's any any possible variable, despite the fact that it's actually helping people wing off cigarettes, then you gotta regulate it, to kingdom come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. With them regulating e-cigarettes, vape juice, whatever else, versus how they regulate anything else that gets in the way of where big tax money comes from.
Exactly.
And it's just insane. So anyway, call congressmen, call everybody, tell them to tell the FDA to stay off of kratom. The American Kratom Association is going to be doing a bunch of drives for lobbyists and those sorts of things, and we'll be handling a social media presence in order to remind people that kratom does not need to go away and to ask people to help join the fight. So if you are willing, please look up the American Kratom Association or the Botanical Legal Defense Fund, and both of them can point you in right directions on how to help save kratom. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today, my good friend Caleb sent me before the show, and was that the Ninth District Circuit Court that made
I believe so. I think it was Ninth District. Let me pull it up here. If my computer will let me see through this advertisement.
Is it the Samsung one?
Oh, I have no idea. So, yeah,
Okay.
Ninth Circuit.
The Ninth District Circuit Court decided today that people who have medical marijuana cards cannot own guns. Which, as people who firmly believe in the Second Amendment, we disagree wholeheartedly with this decision.
So this is one of those areas that really that I have really thought about for quite some time, and the war on drugs is honestly the greatest infringement upon the Second Amendment than anything else that any other piece of legislation or any other try to regulation or anything like that. The war on drugs has done more harm and has infringed more people's rights to keep and bear arms than any other thing. And quite honestly, that could be applied to the entire Bill of Rights. But with the Second Amendment being the topic at hand, it is complete hypocrisy that conservatives who want to basically keep the war on drugs, who want to regulate what you do in your own life. It is very ironic, and it's very hypocritical of them to say that they support the Second Amendment, but then they also say, we also support regulating your life and telling what you can do in your own body, because you have situations like this where if, you smoke marijuana, which it doesn't really affect, I don't really see the science that they're pulling where they're saying that medical marijuana card holders are irrational. That was the justification, is that they could be more irrational or more what was the word they used? I can't find it right now. It said something about being irrational and could possibly it could possibly be more dangerous with it because you're on medical marijuana, equating it to basically like prescription drugs or something for depression.
Unpredictable behavior, irrational,
unpredictable behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's just, first of all, that's no excuse to violate your Second Amendment rights, like none whatsoever. If that was the case, then there would be a lot more instances of people not getting firearms.
Absolutely.
You're just trying to find an excuse to crack down on weed, which is why something else, like I don't think that Trump is this great champion of the Second Amendment the way that everyone makes him out to be, because of how he got Sessions as the Attorney General. I consider that more dangerous than whatever Dianne Feinstein is trying to push through Congress right now, because she reintroduces an assault weapons ban. That's not going to pass. It's basically the same thing that that the Republicans did with Obamacare in under President Obama, whenever they knew that there was no chance that it was going to pass. It was all a show vote. This is essentially, I see this as basically the same thing. No Republican's going to vote for it. Every Democrat's going to vote for it. It's going to get struck down. The president would never sign it. But what is actually infringing on your rights is basically situations like this, with situations like with Jeff Sessions trying to crack down more on marijuana. That is real. That is happening day after day.
Yes. Because once they start infringing on once they start infringing on certain rights, they're going to start infringing on other rights. And you made a post today that you felt that Republicans were actually more dangerous for civil rights than the Democrats, because the Republicans will sit there and say, we don't want to infringe on your civil rights, and then backdoor it, where the Democrats will openly state that they want to do it and then attempt.
Well, I mean, just with liberty in general, because you can apply this to free markets. You can apply this to the Second Amendment. You can apply this to the First Amendment. You know, Republicans will hold these rallies and they'll get up on stage at events like CPAC, and they can really stir a crowd, and they can really get people to donate to them and vote for them. But and they might even vote for some good things that are, they might be like show votes or something like that. But when it comes to things that actually matter, like the war on drugs, which the war on drugs can violate your Second Amendment, it can violate your Fourth Amendment, it can violate your Fifth Amendment. I mean, there's so many things that you can just go down the Bill of Rights and see. Does the war on drugs violate this? Absolutely.
Yes.
And that was, as we all know, a Republican initiative from the get-go. I mean, that was Nixon.
That was Nixon.
Even on the side of economics, even I remember, I think it was last week or the week before when you and Mo were talking about this a little bit. And you brought up healthcare and how Republicans they at least somewhat get that one right. But I mean, that was even initially brought to the national spotlight by a Republican in 1908, I think, or 1912, I think. It was Teddy Roosevelt,
right,
is who first brought it to the national spotlight and to the national stage. So everything that has been brought through has been through Republicans who are just basically big government in disguise, but everyone wants to vote for them because they're scared of the authenticness of big government in your face that the Democrats have.
Teddy Roosevelt's a very interesting person, because so many Republicans talk about how great he was. But
I have very negative opinions of him that gets me in trouble a lot with several of my friends. But
I do think that Teddy Roosevelt was pretty much a badass. I'll give him that. Like, he was very much a badass in that, like, he got into boxing matches and went on like safaris and stuff very cool.
I mean, yeah, but you could also say that about Lincoln and about Jackson. I mean, Jackson beat a guy.
Jackson was an ass, but he was a badass. Like, that dude.
Jackson beat a guy with a cane after an assassination attempt.
Right. The guy shot him, and then he beat the dude with a cane.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. But he also, it's the strongman politics that all of these guys hold, that I'm the tough conservative here. Or, I mean, even in Jackson's case, people like Trump hold him up as this icon that we should strive to, despite the whole Trail of Tears things,
right?
Kind of a black eye on our on our image.
And so many people give Jackson such a pass because he defeated the Banks twice, but still at the same time, like, that doesn't excuse everything.
I don't see how
else.
any of that, and that's kind of the mentality that a lot of people have, is that they want a strong conservative, which kind of gives way to why so many Republicans are so much worse about government than Democrats are, because they may talk a good talk about rights and about free markets and all this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's the authoritarian strongman mindset that we got to do what we got to do.
After I believe it was right after the Panama Canal, because Teddy Roosevelt did the Panama Canal without Congress. He just said, yeah, we're going to do this, and he did. And then when somebody brought him up and said, why did you do it this way? He said, if I had introduced this to Congress, they would have spent months fighting it in Congress. Now they just get to spend the rest of their lives fighting me about it. And so he basically just took a monarchy approach to it.
That's a very dangerous
It is.
road to go down.
Exactly. And everybody just kind of allowed it.
I mean, yeah, they might spend months debating about it. That's a good thing.
Right.
Because if worst case scenario, it doesn't happen, or best case scenario, depending on your outlook on it.
Yeah, depending on the issue. Yeah, but I mean,
but it will at least give the American people a chance to sit back and look and see what they're trying to push through.
Exactly, and that, I mean, especially back in 1912 or whenever I don't know when the Panama Canal was built. I think it was 1910, 1912ish.
Yeah, it would have been around early 1900s, before 1912, because that was Teddy had like a 4-year break.
Yeah, he had his hiatus.
Right.
But yeah, like it was that kind of thinking, and then nobody did anything about it. That ended up like it led to people nowadays just being able to use executive orders at will.
He was without question the forerunner of seizing in peacetime, seizing executive authority where the Constitution did not authorize it.
Yes. But, the thing that so many people say that, talk about how great he is that they say, what was it? He's done so much for the National Park Service.
Which that kind of pisses me off too, because
right, yeah, I know.
I mean, there's like I just hate roads and national parks and schools and
right,
but I mean, all joking aside, that was a massive, not only executive overreach, a massive abuse of executive power, but also an abuse of federal power on the states. Because that was stealing land that the states had.
Yep.
And said, no, we're going to make this federalized.
Yes, they took all of the parks from all of the West, essentially, and some from the East, but mainly from the West, and said, no, this is all going to become federal land. You can't do anything to it, and we're going to hire people through federal money in order to take care of it or not take care of it. And
I mean, if you look at a map of the West right now, today, like the entire state of Nevada is essentially federal land.
Yes.
And that leads to situations like the Bundy situation where there are property rights disputes, and somebody they have the FBI face off and somebody dies because the government has so much overreach in the West right now.
Yes. And the amount of government control over any of that stuff, like they should give all of those things back to the states. The federal government should not be in charge of running the Grand Canyon.
No, not at all.
That should be handled by Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and wherever else it is out there. I've been there. I just don't remember which parts of the country it's in. But
I mean, I am a Buffalo. I love Buffalo. I love bison, and I love the West. I've been out to Yellowstone once, but I took a trip in the Northwest a few years ago and a trip in the Southwest about 7 years ago, and I love all of it.
Yes.
The federal government didn't make that.
No.
Like it would have been beautiful without the federal government. I understand the preservation arguments, but you can equally get things done and have things equally preserved through either the states or through private property rights.
Yes.
Much better than you can through the government.
It'll be done much more efficiently and much more cheaply.
The federal government, I should say.
Right.
And not only that, but I mean, if you look throughout history in the opposite end of the spectrum, it was because the government essentially gave free reign to the West and there were no actual property rights, that led almost to the complete extinction of the buffalo, to where now they have to somehow protect the bison from going extinct. That was a government originated problem.
I did not know that, actually. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't know that.
I mean, that's the tragedy of the commons. I mean, you can look at the Pilgrims with that, because I mean that was the first American experiment in socialism. Was the Pilgrims? That's how we got our first Thanksgiving, was because they rejected communalism.
Yes.
And they said, we got to do something different, because this whole community thing, it's starving us, and we're not going to survive another winter.
Yep.
And that's been a reoccurring theme over and over and over again throughout our history. Every time that you just open things up and nobody owns it, or everyone's owns it, so nobody owns it, then it leads to mass starvation.
Exactly. And that's when, like, whenever the government shuts down, like, okay, so the government shuts down because, of budget crisis or whatever.
Yeah, that kills me the most. Like, they actually pay more money to keep people from going in the parks.
Exactly.
Than what they would do if they just left it open and just not paid their staff.
Right.
To maintain it or whatever.
Exactly. And like, so if you go to DC, they actually have blocked off the Lincoln Memorial because you can't walk onto the steps while the government's closed.
Yeah, that's what national parks look like when it's completely run by the federal government.
Exactly. Sorry.
Then all the strings are attached to it.
We can't figure out whether or not to fund Planned Parenthood, so sorry, you don't get to go take a look at the Jefferson Memorial.
Yeah, even though it's a completely wide open...
Right, even though you walk past it, you can't go up onto the steps to take a picture of the statue. Like,
that's so asinine.
It is idiotic, and of course it explains the federal government in the most perfect of ways.
Right.
I love the story that came out today, which, I mean, I find this absolutely hilarious, and I agree with it, but they are going to get a lesson that they don't really want. But Cards Against Humanity bought a section of the border.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
I think that is so funny, and I'm 100% on board. Like, privatize the border. Like, let whoever buy up sections of lands of the border. Cards Against Humanity is going to get a really awful lesson in eminent domain soon.
That might be interesting, though, if they do try to